y'all, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to teach you a few tricks to fading out images in your designs so that they look better on t-shirts. These are all techniques that I use myself and that I would say are the most efficient and effective way of going about it. Learning how to fade out your designs can really help with your compositions, so it's definitely something you want to keep in your toolbox. Before I start though, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on my post notifications. I post videos like this every week to help you become a better designer. So click that bell and be notified when I post a video just like this. Let's get started. So I have a few examples here set up for you. I'm going to show you basically two ways to fade out your images. The first one is doing a soft fade like you see here on Dua Lipa, and the other one is doing a more grungy fade like you see here on this Rush graphic. So I'll just get right into it. I'll start with Dua here, and you can see that this is the final graphic. Well, it wasn't the final graphic. Here's what it looks like without the fade. Definitely want to keep that fade in there if I'm putting this on a t-shirt, and so the best way to do that would be to make a layer mask on the layer that you want to fade out. So I'm going to add a layer mask to this. I'll take a soft brush, which is basically just brush on hardness 0. Make sure the opacity is all the way up on this. I don't know why mine wasn't. Then I'm going to take the black color in my color palette. I'm just going to brush in this layer mask to fade her out. Real simple stuff. I mean, you're just brushing here. If you want a perfectly straight line, then you could click on one point, hold shift, and then click on another point, and that will make a straight line. Like I said, super simple. This is the standard way of going about it. But there's another trick to make this look even more professional. After you're done fading it out, go ahead and make a levels adjustment. And since I'm on a black background, I'm going to bring these black values in a little bit to increase the contrast. Looking good. Now I'm going to invert the mask on this levels by pressing Command I. That's going to turn it all black. And now I can paint in where I want using white on this layer mask. So I'm going to paint in right over that fade again. As we can see, it's just a much more tasteful fade. It actually interplays with the brightness of the image and the colors within it. So this just gives the fade a much more natural look because it's also darkening the colors here, and it affects the darker parts of the image more harshly, which just gives it a nice and professional look. So super simple tip, but very effective. Here's what it looks like before the levels. Here's what it looks like after. I very much prefer what it looks like after. And since it kind of ups your fade a little bit, you can always just drag the layer masks down, and that way you can have the fade in the original place that you wanted it. So very similar process on a white background. For example, I have this wrap pack design that I did. Here's what it looks like faded out, and I'm going to show you how I did this very quickly. So it's the same process. This time I would just have to make a layer mask for each of these subjects in here. So I have Sammy, Dean, and Frank. I'm going to go one by one, just brushing out parts of this image. So I'm going to take my soft brush a little bit off the bottom of Sammy. I'm going to do the same for Dean here, and I kind of want to show that text a little bit. So let me do sort of curved fade here, which don't forget you could do. You don't have to do a perfectly straight line. You can always curve your fade a little bit so that it fits better within your composition. Lastly, I'll do Frank. I'll do a similar thing here where it's not just a straight line, but it's actually interplaying with the parts of the composition, like the text here. So that's not a perfect straight line, but I think it looks good. Cool. So now we can add a levels adjustment on each of these fades. I'm going to do it layer by layer. So I'll add a levels adjustment on top of the Sammy group here. And since it's a white background, I'm kicking up these whites, bringing them to the left, and then I'm going to do the same thing by inverting my layer mask and painting on the spot where I just did my fade, and that's just going to give us a more tasteful fade. And I'm going to do this for each one of these. So another levels adjustment for Dean, bring the whites in here, and then I'll invert my layer mask, paint in these spots here, and same thing for Frank. Make my levels, bring it up here, invert layer mask, paint in on the fade. Cool. This is looking pretty good. This example is a little bit more subtle. Here's the after and here's the before. So you can see very subtle difference, but I think it definitely helps out in these parts here where you want a harsher contrast on the fade and you also want it to affect the colors of the image. Just looks better, and I think it also screen prints better because there's less of a halftone pattern that has to go on here. I've seen it happen where a designer uses a very kind of stretched out fade on an image, and then when it gets screen printed, that fade kind of gets turned to mush because the halftones just don't blend correctly and do it justice. So you definitely want a higher contrast on your fades, and the levels adjustment both helps to do that, and it also provides a nicer looking fade. All right, cool. Now I want to get into how you could do grungy fades in your images like I did on this Rush design. This is a grungier graphic, obviously, so the grungy fade fits way better, and this is just a call that you have to make from graphic to graphic. So to do this fade, I actually made a grunge brush, and then I did the same thing where I just painted out this bottom part in the layer mask using that brush. And this is actually super easy to do. I'm going to show you how to make that brush right now. So make a new empty layer and take a soft brush. It could be any size, doesn't matter. Just click once. Oops, make sure your color's on black. Just click once and then click again. And now you're going to take this empty layer and you're going to convert it to a smart object. Open up that smart object by double clicking the thumbnail. Cool. Now we're in the smart object. What we're going to do next is add a white background. So make a new layer, fill that with white, and then drag that behind this soft brush layer. I'm going to merge these layers, then I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to go into filter gallery. So that's filter gallery. I'm going to use these settings to get this nice grungy look on our soft brush. So first I have grain type regular, intensity 14, contrast 25. You could obviously play around with these a little bit. It's not, you know, set in stone, but these are the values that I have found work best for me. I can actually change these around a little bit just to show you what that would look like. Just some mildly different effects. Next grain type enlarged, intensity around 20, contrast around 37. Of course, go ahead and play with these to your liking. These are the settings that I chose and they seem to have worked so far. Next up we have stamp. Turn the light dark balance all the way down to 3. And smoothness you can play with. I like it down at 2, but if you want something a little less noisy and faded out, then you can turn the smoothness up a little bit. I'm going to keep it at 2. And I'm gonna press OK, and now we're all good. I'm gonna size this up a little bit, upscale this layer. Cool. Now I'm gonna press Command A on my keyboard to select the entire canvas. I'm gonna go up to Edit and Define Brush Preset, and I'm just gonna name this whatever. I'll name it Grunge 1. And now we have this as a brush. So you can see if I start brushing, go back to this example. You see if I start brushing that we have this grunge brush, but it looks kind of weird. It looks clearly repeated. So there's a way to fix that. We're going to go up to the brush settings here by clicking this little box icon, and now we can click on the shape dynamics, and the two inputs we want to mess with is the size jitter, which I would just bring up a little bit, probably in the 20%, and then definitely mess with the angle. You can really turn this as high as you want, it doesn't matter. After a certain amount it kind of all looks the same, so just choose like pretty much any amount. I'm gonna just go for 50 here, and you can see now when I paint with this brush that it is not repeating itself, and it just looks like a soft brush that was grunged out. So looking pretty good. Now of course we can use this to fade out our images using the layer mask. So I'm gonna open up this rush design again, and I'll go back to the image that I need to fade out, and I'll just make a layer mask on this, and I'll use my grunge brush to fade out that bottom part. Now I don't like how this grain is kind of too small compared to the other grain in the image, so what I could do is redo this layer mask, and I'll just make my brush a little bit bigger this time, and I'll brush slightly around the edge of the image, and now I have a larger grain in that layer mask, and it just looks so much better. So boom, there we have it. That was very, very simple. Even making your own grunge brush was very simple. So you just learned 2 very easy ways to fade out images in your designs to make them look better within your composition and look better on a t-shirt. And that's pretty much it. As always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all your support. If you learned something, make sure to like this video, and if you want to learn more, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell to be notified when I upload new videos just like this, so you can become a better designer. That's all I got for you for today, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.